Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tony Long. I'm from the WWF European Policy Office in Brussels. I'm going to speak about the work WWF has been doing on sustainable diets, sustainable food, but I'm not going to say too much about that. There are other WWF experts in the room who know a lot about the so-called Live Well project, which we've been running for 3 years now with a grant from the European Commission of just under £3 million. That 3-year project has been looking at sustainable diets from the point of view initially of how to reduce greenhouse gases. And the estimates of the proportion of greenhouse gases from food production, food consumption, range anywhere from 19% to 30%, depending on what you include. If you include, I saw the London figures of just under 20%, but if you include all transport of food, I'm sure you're getting much closer to the 30% figure. So this is where Live Well started. We've been experimenting with sustainable plates, food plates, in 3 countries, Spain, France, and Sweden. We've learned a lot of lessons from those countries and from those country experiments, including the importance of the whole cultural dimension of food and how one size doesn't fit all. So this is the Live Well experience. And we've just submitted a project now for another 3-year round, and hoping that will be successful. If it is, we'll extend the project to more countries, one of which will certainly be Italy, and another probably Germany. And we had the example this morning of the work on Germany, sustainable food. What I'm going to talk about now is from the perspective of Brussels, and it's the policy part of the Live Well project, which is what I'm responsible for. And some of you will know that even quite recently, we had a European Commission internet consultation. I don't know if you recall that. An internet consultation which was to be the precursor of a communication on sustainable food policy. The internet consultation, rather helpfully, had 5 headings. One was what would be the technical knowledge required to know the environmental implications of food and food production. So technical knowledge, food production. The second was sustainable production of food. The third was sustainable consumption. So it took us right into the Live Well debate. The fourth was the food waste. And the fifth heading of this internet consultation, rather tantalizingly, was policy coherence. What would you need to have a sustainable food policy? How would you need to get your agriculture policy linked with your trade policy, linked with your health policy, linked with your nutrition policy, linked with your fisheries policy, and so on? Policy coherence, probably the biggest challenge of them all. Not just at a European level, but I would think at government level and even local level, we've just been hearing about. So this was the promise we had in 2013. WWF, my organization, adopted 3 main tactics, policy initiatives, let's call them. The first was to work with the major Directorate Generals in Brussels to keep that agenda as wide open as possible, to keep to the 5 issues and not let the default as it was threatening to become a food waste agenda. And everybody was more or less happy with food waste. Even the Director General for the Environment was leaning towards that direction. We wanted to keep it open, at least for those other 4 headings. The second thing we did was to go out and build a rather unusual political constituency in support of the sustainable food communication. That political constituency was drawn from a Commission high-level forum on the food supply chain. And we managed to get, the members of that high-level forum, a Commission forum, managed to produce a sustainable food communication press release and policy. It's pretty unusual coalition, and the press release that it issued called European Food Chain Partners Working Towards a More Sustainable Food System. This press release was on the 28th of April this year. And the press release says, our policy has 32 recommendations which could help achieve a more sustainable food chain by 2020, including improving coherence among different food-related policy objectives, taking into account all aspects of sustainability, ranging from EU agriculture and fisheries, environmental policies, health and consumers, to waste management and energy policies. Now, that's pretty unusual, but just think who was in that coalition, who signed the statement. Copa Cogeca, the Farmers Union, signed. Food and Drink Europe, one of the biggest trade lobbies in Brussels. Eurocommerce, so that's the whole of the supermarket chains. Eurocoop, Nestle, Unilever, WWF. We all signed the policy in April. If any of you want to go and find that, you'll find it probably easiest. You can look on the WWF.eu website, or you can find it on the Food Drink Europe website, April the 29th, and it's the sustainable food communication from our organizations. The third strategy was to build a coalition in the Parliament, and that we did by getting a food group in the European Parliament under the leadership of Bart Staes. It's called Food Sense Europe, and the parliamentarians wrote to President Barroso in October and said, we want the Commission to bring forward a sustainable food communication. I haven't got a PowerPoint, but so I have to use visual aids. So this is the letter from President Barroso. And so I'll just quote from President Barroso. His letter was dated 31st of October. I think that was his very last day. This may have been his very last letter. He was out on the 1st of November. But he said, and this is in line with my question this morning, Tim, so we need to come back to this. President Barroso, to the parliamentarians, in line with the principle of subsidiarity, it has not been demonstrated that food sustainability cannot be sufficiently achieved by the member states acting on their own, or that action at union level is the only way to deal with this issue. Respect of proportionality requires union action not to exceed what is necessary to achieve the objectives of the treaty. There are lots of measures that member states can take in line with the way their food systems are organized and in full respect of their national traditions. So so that was the end of that. And then, and now we come, I think, to, just in my final remarks, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And this really is a quite set of difficult questions, because we now have a new commission. The day after the letter was written, President Jean-Claude Juncker took over. He announced his first vice president, Frans Timmermans from the Netherlands. would be in charge of the better regulation agenda. He's outlined 10 political priorities, not one of which includes the environment, not one of which includes food policy, not one of which includes public health. So everything that Barroso was saying here about subsidiarity and how food policy doesn't belong at EU level, that has been continued, but even with even more reinforcement by Jean-Claude Juncker and Timmermans. So first of all, I'll tell you what WWF's going to do, and then I'm going to ask in the discussion what you think we should be doing. WWF issued a call for action last week when we had our Live Well conference in Brussels, and we are calling on this commission to continue to bring forward the communication on building a sustainable food system, and we're saying that it should do so in the first half of 2015. Secondly, we're saying that the EU must develop a policy strategy and implementation plan to build a sustainable, healthy, and climate-friendly food policy by 2030. And we're saying, thirdly, that there should be cooperation between European stakeholders in this policy area. But my question is, what if this isn't going to work? What if this subsidiarity, pushing to the lowest level of policy, is going to be the dominant theme for the next 5 years, or even the next 10 years? Then what are we going to do? And I think we might have to then fit our agenda into the agenda that is being given to us by the new administration. And then I'm wondering whether we shouldn't be looking at the Juncker priorities and saying, where can we fit our agenda into that? And I think the areas that we're going to have to explore, there aren't many of them, I have to say, but one of them is around the whole theme of green economy, which Juncker says that he's totally committed to. So how can we start expressing our agenda in a green economy agenda? The second thing that's spoken about a lot is in the Juncker priorities is the concept of fairness. And I'm just wondering whether this idea of Europe actually treating the rest of the world unfairly by its overconsumption habit isn't something that we should be exploring. It's not just that Europe is consuming 2.6 planets worth, it's that we're depriving other countries of their fair share of their development potential now and in the future. So the fairness agenda is one that we can explore. Global warming is prominent in the agenda, so I'm wondering whether we have to go back to the greenhouse gas discussion, see whether that could be helpful for us. And I think the whole debate on food, on health, on nutrition, on fairness, on equity, I think if we're going to have any chance at all of making this stick at a European level, we're going to have to express it increasingly also in the language of jobs and jobs and jobs. If we don't do that, then the message that we're being given, which is, and you know it's the message that Juncker is saying loud and clear now, in Europe we'll do the big things better and the small things we'll leave alone. And if we don't find out how to make our agenda a big agenda, then I think we're going to drop out. Thank you.